again, this is the 12th of May 2024, and this is probably more of an aughty-thoughty than the title might suggest, as fanfic is, and I really don't think it gets enough credit for being a really great way to work through spins and to obliquely info dump, as so many of us very often feel the need to. With other people who share our interests. I'll begin by defining what fanfic is. It's any piece of writing, a piece of fictional writing about an existing work. Be it a TV series or a film or a novel, or it can even be about a real person, a real celebrity that you're a fan of. That's known as real person or RP fanfic, and I'll discuss that later. Actually, that's there are some kind of ethical questions about real person fanfic that I will go into later. And it can be in the form of a poem or a short story or an ongoing epic novel or a script. I mean, it can be absolutely any kind of fiction. And first, I think the first thing to talk about is to dispel the myth that it is all a load of porn. Of course, that is one aspect of it. There are people who just write a load of dirty stuff about their favourite characters, but they are by no means the majority or the standard. There are as many genres of fanfic as there are any other kind of literature. And I mean, romance generally is a popular one. People enjoy writing it, and it gets a lot of readers. And it's something that's quite easy to do. You don't need to have a lot of plot in a romance story. And some of that romance does become sexually explicit. It's often known as smutfic. As opposed to fluff, which is just a sort of nice, clean, cutesy romance. And it's generally known as slash, when you get two characters from an existing story who are generally not romantically involved, but then you put them together, and it's known as slash because as you write your description for your story, you will put the names of the characters with a slash between them, a stroke. And if you regularly write about the same characters, you might call them your OTP, your one true pairing, because it's described as pairing the characters or shipping the characters alternatively, because it's short for relationship. You're imagining they're in a relationship. And I think something we have to discuss when talking about fanfic romance is that pretty much the standard the thing that you'd expect if you were looking through your favourite fanfics for some romance stories to read is that they are largely, perhaps even overwhelmingly, about two men. So much so that het slash, that's heterosexual, or fem slash, female, is kind of a special interest niche genre of its own. If someone says they're writing a slash fic or they've been reading a slash fic, the first thing you'd assume is that it's about two men. And I don't actually know why this is, but I have some theories. I mean, the first one is that it's quite a feminine pastime. You know, creative writing generally. Most writers are women, and they can imagine male characters or male actors that they fancy in a sexual situation. You can sort of kill two birds with one stone by having two of them together. Or maybe it's less threatening to imagine them, not with another woman. That might make them feel a bit kind of jealous to imagine that. But if you imagine them with another man, then it's kind of removed. Another is that, maybe 20, 30 years ago, when the concept of fanfic was really getting established on the fairly new invention that was the internet, anything gay, male, was sort of instantly a little bit edgy and really silly and funny. And it was a quick way of being a little bit shocking. Or is it just that it became so common that it's still the done thing? I don't know. It could be something to do with the lack of strong female characters in fiction. Interesting characters that you would want to know more about and write about and imagine, what they're like in other situations. Maybe there's a lot more male than female characters that sort of fit that description. I don't know. Why is there so much male slash around? Comment me if you have a theory. And what was I going to say? Yeah, things that stories that are very explicit or are pornographic even. They used to put in descriptions lemons. That used to be the warning sign, lemons. But they don't use that anymore, and I don't know why. I haven't seen that word lemons for years, and I don't know why. Why it's gone out of fashion. I don't know where it came from even. Now they just put it on as a kind of content warning or trigger warning, warning explicit content, or for some sort of specific thing that happens in the story. I think it is good etiquette, really, to include any kind of possible trigger warnings in your description, along with things like word count and which characters, what you're referencing. If there's a particular episode that you're kind of writing a sequel to, or whatever, it's I think it's just kind of good form to put that in the description, just in case the reader has not seen that one and it doesn't mean anything to them. Anyway, yes, where do you find fanfic? I mean, there are specific websites for posting your fanfics on. There's one called fanfiction.net, which is kind of dying a death. I find it used to be very busy, but there really aren't as many users as there used to be. And it's just divided up into, categories of TV, books, films, and so on, and then sort of subcategories within that, so you can just sort of find whatever you're looking for or post in a particular fandom. There's one called An Archive of Our Own, or AO3 for short, which I've kind of moved on to now. I used to use fanfiction.net as my main one, but now I do post much more on AO3 because I find it has a lot more users, get a lot more readership, and also I find it a bit more user friendly to post things. Just the kind of form that you fill in to post your stories, it's just a lot easier to use. And some particular fan websites will have an area for people to post their stories. Some people make their own websites. There are other fanfic websites. I mean, there's if you just search fanfic for whatever, you'll probably find something. Someone somewhere is writing fanfic for your fandom. Even if it's quite obscure, you'll probably find something somewhere. And yeah, as I say, it is a great way, if you're, heavily involved mentally in a fictional world and the characters, and you sort of want to communicate with other fans about everything you're imagining, your origin stories for the characters, what you think happened next, what you'd like to imagine they do the rest of the time. It's a really great way to get that all off your chest and post it somewhere, so that it's available for anyone else to have a read of, post reviews of. And when you kind of you can get involved in these little fan communities where people do start reading and writing things for each other. And I find that really nice, actually. You see the same names popping up time and time again, and people kind of inspiring each other to write things. And when you see your own sort of headcanons appearing in someone else's work, or they mention that, oh, this was inspired by so and so's story about such and such, so and so's origin story or whatever. It's it is very very flattering, I think, and you get these sort of inspirations of inspirations, I think the only danger with that is it can get a long way removed from the canon. That is the original source. And a casual reader who happens across the fandom sometime later won't necessarily get all your references. I personally don't really enjoy ones that are kind of fanfic of fanfic of fanfic. Because when I'm reading, I kind of want to read about the original source, not someone else's interpretation of someone else's interpretation of the original source, But yeah, I get how it does. It does sort of form, connections between fans. I wrote this for you, you know. About, you know, our shared passion. And I think the the thing that I really enjoy about the whole concept of fanfic is that people are just writing it for love. It is purely about something that, you know, they enjoyed so much that, you know, they want to know more about it. They want to tell other people what they thought of it, what they think this character would have done in this other situation. And that, you know, there's no reward involved other than, you know, that, you know, you've made someone else happy. You know, you've given someone else some reading material. You know, there's no money involved. I mean, sometimes you know, you get competitions organised, and, you know, the winning entry might get a prize or something, but overwhelmingly it is done purely for love. And the other thing that, you know, I personally find fascinating about it is that, you know, you don't have to be a good writer. You know, if you're published, if your story is being published, then it suggests it's not necessarily a fantastic story, but it does suggest that, you know, there is at least some sort of market for this. You know, somebody you know, who publishes in a professional capacity has read it and thought, yeah, that'll make us some money. You know, you expect when you open a book, a published work, that, you know, that it'll be at least in standard spelling, punctuation and grammar, you know. But when you open up a link, oh, read this fanfic, it's really good, you have no idea what you're going to find. I mean, if it's a recommendation, then yeah, you can sort of guess that there's probably something something pretty good in there. But, you know, if you're scrolling through people's works on a fan site, think, oh, I'll just click on that, let's see what this is about. You have no idea whether it was by a child or an adult, or whether the person who wrote it was completely off the face drunk, or, you know, what sort of quality work it is, you know, whether the writer could string a plot together. You have no idea what's coming. And sometimes you find an absolute hidden gem. Sometimes it's gripping, fantastic, brilliant writing. It's so descriptive. It's, you know, it takes you on an emotional journey. Sometimes it's awful. Sometimes it's by someone who, you know, doesn't even know how to put a sentence together. And it's just fascinating to see the contrast. And, you know, that kind of really bad writing is in its own way as fascinating as the fantastic writing. I mean, most of it's mediocre, you know. And yeah, I just think that is what makes it, well, a large part of what makes it very interesting. So the range of people who just feel the need to write something and share it publicly. For no reason other than that they love the show, stroke book, stroke whatever. Ethical issues. As long as you are either writing on a fanfic website, or you put a disclaimer on it saying, you know, making it very clear, these are not my characters, this is a work of fan fiction. You know, you're covered for copyright. There are a few writers who have said they don't want their work shared on certain websites. Yeah, fanfic of their work shared on certain websites. I know fanfiction.net did actually have the list, you know, sort of clearly displayed. You know, do not share, you know, fanfic of work by these artists. But that's the only place I've ever seen, you know, that as a warning. I don't know why they don't want anyone else to write fanfic of their works or to share them, but, well, you know, their wishes are their wishes, and presumably if you're really into their work, you'll respect their feelings. The ethical quandary, I think, really comes with the real person fanfic. I mean, yeah, you can put a disclaimer on saying, you know, this is not true. But you know, there's always going to be the question of, you know, where did your inspiration come from? You know, it could be taken out of context somewhere. The person themselves might find it and feel embarrassed about it. I mean, I remember there was an episode of Mock the Week once where you know, all the comedians on Mock the Week were laughing and having a great time, sort of reading out bits of fanfic people had actually wrote about them, and they just thought it was all really funny. But is that how anyone else would react to it? I mean, that's one set of individuals who are all comedians, you know. I remember there was a story in the news a few years ago about Girls Aloud. Someone had, well, I don't know if you'd call it a fanfic, it was more like an anti-fanfic. Someone who clearly had something personal against Girls Aloud, of all people, had created this, you know, kind of horrific series of tortures, and it was being investigated as a threat. I mean, I can't remember whether you know, they ever got arrested for it or charged with anything, but yeah, there was a discussion going on a news programme once about whether this should be seen as a genuine threat, or whether any crime had been committed just by, you know, writing these things, publishing that, you know, this is apparently what the author wanted to do to the members of Girls Aloud, or whether, you know, because it was, you know, advertised as fanfic, you know, just a work of fiction, you know, does that sort of absolve them of all guilt? And you can imagine, you know, if you were, say, a member of Girls Aloud, and you sort of read someone's work of fiction about how they wanted to chop you up and murder you, you know, you probably would feel a bit creeped out by it. I don't know, would you feel threatened? Would you actually worry that this person really wanted to do these things to you and actually wanted... I mean, famous people are probably aware that, you know, not every member of the general public is reasonable. Now, they're probably aware that some people love them, some people hate them. And some of those people are dangerous. The ones that love them probably as much as the ones that hate them. But do they actually want to see it in writing? Yeah, it's a difficult one. I did occasionally used to write real person fanfic, mostly about comedians that I liked. But yeah, I did sort of question it, whether it was morally okay, and I couldn't really decide, so I sort of abandoned that. I think I think it's probably more acceptable, if you have strong feelings about a particular character, it's more acceptable to express this in the form of a fanfic than to say send them hate mail or go and hang around outside their house shouting things through the windows. But yeah, probably better really to keep it to yourself. Again, fanfiction.net does have a rule, no real people. Although, yeah, there are still some that slip through the net. They haven't actually removed a lot of real person fanfics that I've seen on there. and then there's sort of grey areas of what's a real person and what's a character. Especially when you're talking about comedians. Is their stage persona a real person? Yeah, I read. I'm kind of involved in the Foil Arms and Hog fandom at the moment, and we've had a sort of fanfic competition going on, and one of the rules was you can write about Foil Arms and Hog as opposed to one of their characters, but actually call them Foil Arms and Hog as opposed to Sean Finnegan, Conor McKenna, and Sean Flanagan. Just to make it clear that you are talking about them as their public persona and not them as a real person. There's just no confusion there. Right. I think that is sort of a reasonable way of dealing with it. Of course, it will be up to the individuals involved to have the final word on that. The only fanfic that I personally myself don't really enjoy, and if I see some indication of this in the summary, I'll just skip it, is the kind that just goes, on and on and on, that doesn't have a plot. It goes on and on and on. Yeah, and you can tell that the writer started writing it and had an idea, but then wrote a bit more, and then had another idea and wrote a bit more. But instead of making it, several short stories, they just sort of tacked them all together. And you start and then chapter 7's got absolutely nothing to do with the beginning. Well, except that it's got the same characters, obviously, and then by chapter 11, something completely different's happening. I do like to have an actual story, or some sort of scene created if it's only a very short one. And ones that are just smut fics. I'm not crazy about, to be honest. I just sort of find them really cringeworthy, and again, not a lot of plot. Yeah, occasionally you'll read a crossover or an AU. Now, crossover being when you get two or more fandoms that you sort of mix together. An AU being alternate universe. That means you take the characters out of their original setting and put them somewhere else. Like you do Coronation Street in space or whatever. And sometimes they just do not work. You just think, why did somebody write this? I think some crossovers are really clever, and you can see exactly why someone chose these two fandoms to interlink. Some of them don't sound like they'll work, but kind of do. I read one recently about the Vicar of Dibley goes to Middle Earth, and it was brilliant. It was well worth a read. I enjoyed it. It's weird, but it works. I think maybe the right person could make any crossover work. I don't know, but there are some that are a lot more credible than others, let's say. I mean, say I don't know, Hitchhiker's Guide and Discworld. They'd meld together really well. They're both sort of somewhere between fantasy and sci-fi. They've got similar sets of characters that could interact together and so on. They've both got quite a shared fan base as well. They get fair readership. You get something like I don't know, Pobblycoomb and Death Note. How are those two worlds going to collide? Who's going to read it? How many people are fans of both of them? I think there's a lot of things to consider when you take characters out of their original setting, like how magical is their universe? What is the author's intention? What was the author's intention when they wrote the original work? Were they trying to make some sort of political point or so on? Is it serious or is it comedy? What time period is it set in? There's one I read quite a long time ago, really, that was it wasn't even a crossover, it was Faulty Towers. But Basil Fawlty was getting really upset with all these patrons using mobile phones all the time. And I just couldn't picture it, because Faulty Towers to me is just so synonymous with the early 1970s. There's no mobile phones. I think, is it a kind of modern day Faulty Towers? Am I supposed to be imagining Basil Fawlty as a really old man? Or is it just sort of updated? Can I kind of imagine the hotel in a sort of more modern setting? And it really jarred with me. I mean, it was well enough done, but I just found it really hard to picture. Yeah, and that's something you get with some crossovers. When you get someone from a non-magical universe in a magical universe, or well, different time periods, and so on. I'm going to leave it there for the moment. If anyone has anything else to say about fanfic, please pop it in the comments. Yeah, fanfic, a great pastime for autistics, amongst others. Largely, but not exclusively. Oh, you would not believe the amount of autistic people I have met through writing fanfic, honestly. It seems the most obvious thing to do when you're spinning on a fictional world, write a fanfic about it. Anyway, yes, that's it. That's the end. You can go now.